Welcome, everybody, to episode 280 of WordPress Weekly for Wednesday, July 5th, 2017. I'm your host, Jeff Chandler, joined by J Trip. And John, do you have all the extremities? Do you have your fingers? Do you have your toes?
I managed to make it through this 4th of July weekend completely unscathed.
Awesome, because I guess that means you follow my advice from last week. You didn't watch any episodes of Jackass before you participated in blowing things up.
We mostly stayed at home, and we have one dog that is terrified of thunder and loud noises and booms, and so we mostly stayed at home with the thunder jacket on her and tried to make sure that she was as comfortable as possible. That's about our holiday. Our past four holiday days have been.
Is that what they call thunder buddies these days?
We were thunder puppy snuggle buddies basically for 5 days straight.
So our request for reviews last week paid off. We do have a iTunes review I want to get through today, and it's from Edwin Cromley. It's a 5-star review. Woo! Sweet. The addition of J Trip has been excellent. Oh, there you go. Props to him already. It adds a new dynamic to the show that is both entertaining and informative. The show is always top-notch, and WordPress Weekly is a fun and quick way to keep up with many of the moving parts of the WordPress ecosystem. So I've been looking everywhere for a sign that having J Trip on the show as a co-host is a good thing. I finally found it. So John, you're hired. You can stay on the show. You're welcome to be here.
Behind all of the signs that were bad ones, you finally found the one good one to justify your decision. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Edwin. I appreciate that. I'm happy to help Jeff out and be a part of the show, and look forward to hopefully dozens of episodes to come.
Yes, thank you very much for the review, Edwin. And again, all our listeners out there, if you could, please just take a few moments out of your time. If you can, load iTunes and give us a review. 5-star, 1-star, doesn't matter. Just tell us what you think of the show. Just be honest. That's all that's really required of you to do. So with that said, John, we have a epic show lined up for today. In fact, we have a guest on. We have two guests on. We're going to talk about a project called Tuniversity, which is something that recently launched a big-time project. And our first guest on today is Kiko Doran, who, by the way, was last on the show August 12th, 2015. And it feels like he was just on yesterday. It's kind of crazy. But he helped create the Tuniversity book. He's making a documentary about Soccer Town, USA in his spare time, if he has spare time. He's the co-founder of the Prestige Conference, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, Mustang officer, and finally a WordPress contributor. And our second guest on today is Travis Tots, who is a senior web strategist at Modern Tribe, pretty cool design and development agency, and he's the owner of Press75.com. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the show today. And Kiko, I think this puts you in the friend of the show category.
Third time, right?
Third time's the charm.
Nice.
Kiko, if you're on the show enough, eventually you go from friend of the show to co-host.
Part of the show.
So,
yeah. See, I need an iTunes review. Somebody leave a review telling how great I was on here.
Yeah, wow. So it's been about 2 years, Kiko, since you've been on. So I guess maybe just give us a quick rundown of what you've been up to lately, besides your major project.
I think 2 years is pretty much exactly lines up with when I started this project for the most part.
Wow. So. Well, you're welcome. You must have got a lead from the show.
yeah, totally.
I can confirm that because I think you told me about the Tuniversity about 2 years ago at WordCamp Miami for the first time.
Yeah, that was like February. That was like when it really kicked off as officially Tuniversity. But John's probably the first person I told about this. Him and Matt Medeiros, I think, down in Miami.
Nice. And what an incredibly cool project that we will talk about shortly. It sounds like, Jeff, right? You got.
Yes, I wanted to let our listeners know exactly what Tuniversity is, and it's a company dedicated to reinvigorating music education using high-impact multimedia technology and the excitement of today's pop music. Can you tell I didn't write this? This is golden political relations speak right here. But the book takes you through Pharrell's inspiration to create Happy. It deconstructs the song into individual parts that you can both listen to and clap along with, and then finally brings those individual parts back together, showing you how to create your own version of Happy and Apple's GarageBand. So I think uses Apple's iBook, you use GarageBand and a couple of other programs as well. And why don't we start from the very beginning, Kiko? Let's go back 2 years and kind of tell us how this project came to be. How did you get involved with this project initially?
Well, I got involved it started in 1992. I went to music school right out of high school to study jazz guitar and met a guy named Brent Paschke, who we've been, friends now for 25 years. And he went on to become Pharrell's guitar player in 2001 when Pharrell re-recorded the first NERD In Search Of record. He had recorded that kind of his own way that Pharrell does it, where he records. He and Chad Hugo from the Neptunes record most of the parts. But then they brought a live band in, and Brent's band was the band that did that. And Brent has gone on to be Pharrell's guitar player, for the last 16 plus years. So he and I have always kind of batted around ideas for ways to do music education stuff. And he was working on at the time, like more towards a plugin for like audio workstations to be able to, kind of do some teaching through a plugin. But then, I got involved with him and we just sort of made it like a little more, we just kind of always went towards basic. But anyways, it started really with me in music school with Brent and, just relationships that you have for many, many years.
Well, him being the guitar player for Pharrell, I guess that leads into how you got involved with and talked to Pharrell about this project.
Yeah, so Brent took the project.
Idea, or when did he
come?
No,
it was Brent took the project to Pharrell, and Pharrell loved the idea. And Pharrell's always, he's a big advocate for music education. His mom's a teacher. He has a nonprofit that's really focused on, education for kids called From One Hand to Another. And, it just really, it aligned with what, the way Pharrell sees the world. So it was pretty cool.
And I know within the past 2 years, I've met you. I think I met up with you. I know you showed the project to me back at WordCamp US in 2016. So I got to see it in action when you were working there. You've been have your nose to the grindstone here for the past 2 years, and you finally, I think was it last Monday, you actually launched the project.
Yeah, literally last Monday. It's been a crazy, crazy experience to work on something for so long and then put it out into the world. And it's like, I don't know, you feel a little exposed at the same time too, vulnerable, like what's going to happen with it? How are people going to accept it? How are people going to appreciate what we did? Because I think we really did something that's pretty different than the way music has been taught. So,
and how many people were part of the team that worked on this project?
That's it. So that's why I have Travis here. Travis, it was a unique experience for me because I've always taken work as a business consultant more and used WordPress on my own to solve business problems. But it's the first time that I've ever been brought into a project where we had the budget and we knew we had to do things at a level that I could go and use like a full agency for it. So it was a great learning experience for me as well to be, not the client per se, but like the representative for the client. I was like the project manager on the client side. So I really got to learn a lot about what it's like to work with a WordPress agency and realized that, I had some room to improve my game a little bit. But Travis led a whole team at Modern Tribe too that did a bunch of stuff. Well, I don't know, Travis, how many people would you say on your end worked on the project? Anything, even like strategy, anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think so we've got Slack channels, right, dedicated to each one of our projects at Tribe, very similar to distributed agency model. But there's 20 people or so in the Slack channel that's dedicated to the Tuniversity project. So, and keep in mind that spans everything from like Kiko said, the strategy side, so the initial process, the design, design concepting process, and then obviously the site build, dev, and deployment process. So, those things are, I mean, it's a lot of people involved, even for a project that starts with, what we did, which is, iBooks all the way through to WordPress. So I think a pretty big team, actually.
Yeah, I'd say we probably had another 20 outside of the Tribe people that touched it on, copy editing or whatever, pictures, any of that stuff. So it probably, upwards of 40 people, which it's crazy for me to think because it was just like the idea of two of us that really grew into something pretty big. And it makes you realize how many people it takes to accomplish something that you can envision in your head.
Yeah, and especially something I think at this scale too. Like if you think about the involvement of, you know, Brent and obviously Pharrell and I mean the people that Kiko and Brent got to meet with and talk to about this project, like it's pretty rad. And to think about all those steps that have been taken since the inception. It's been a long road to the launch last week, but it's been quite a fun ride for sure.
And Kiko, I think you still live in New Jersey, correct?
I do, yeah. I don't get to spend too much time here lately, but
yeah,
I just had 6 days here. So.
And you keep flying over there on the West Coast to where Apple is. I mean, what was involved in some of these meetings and dealing with Apple to work with them on this project?
Oh, I mean, Apple didn't really have any involvement in the project per se. They just, you know, they worked with us like they would work with any other developer, I guess. You know, they helped us like from like the standpoint of like, you know, making sure it works in different versions. There's a lot of things we didn't think about, you know, how do we, because the project is a book, but the book also includes like some companion files and just things we hadn't really thought of. Like, you know, I had the idea like, oh, it'd be great to have a companion file because I remember like learning from Adobe Classroom in a book and there was like a CD in the back of, you know, or DVD in the back of the book. And I thought, oh, that's a great way to give people a jump start and not have to explain like every little nitnoid detail over and over and over again. You can just kind of show things one time. But when you're dealing with an iBook, it's like brings a whole new set of problems. How do we even get these files? Like, are there even ways to get files into GarageBand on the iPad? And, you know, helped us navigate through some of those things. But, you know,
Kiko, can you talk to our listeners about and give us like the high level overview of how it works and what it is in the iBook? Because having seen it, I feel like I could do a pretty good elevator pitch for it, but it's not something that I think most people are as familiar with as they might be iTunes or a podcast app or something else. So can you talk about just what it is and how it works?
So it all the product is an iBook. You know, that's what you buy is you buy an iBook on the Apple iBook store. And that book, the fulfillment and everything comes through Apple, much like if you use iTunes, or I'd imagine the Android store is the same. All the updates and everything happen through there. But essentially what we're doing is we're bridging the gap from someone who knows literally, like you could know nothing about music, and we bridge the gap from knowing nothing about music to being able to make your own version of a song that you know inside and out in GarageBand. And so, but we're like a conduit of information between, you know, a brand new noob trying to make music and GarageBand essentially.
Right. So you walk them through like how to keep a beat, what is a tempo, like all the like fundamentals really.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I call it sometimes like sheet music on steroids because it does it in a way that you don't have to read music. So it breaks into 3 sections, and probably could get into some of this. The book originally, we had somebody help us write it that was like an expert in music education, and he absolutely is. And he's taught music for many, many decades very effectively. But when trying to do something like that we, you know, consider disruptive, right, or revolutionary, it was hard to go to somebody that's taught music over and over because they just have a way of doing it, and they do it that way because they think it's the right way. Yep. And it probably is the right way to teach music theory and such, but we feel that there's a discord with people wanting to learn music, or like just that first initial breakthrough to music. If a kid goes to school, if they're even lucky enough to have a music program, which they probably in this day and age aren't, but if they are lucky enough to have one, you know, we hand them a trumpet or a violin oftentimes and then start teaching them how to read. But that's a discord from what they actually wanted to do. They wanted to make music. They didn't want to learn the theoretical applications of music. So it's like an introduction to music. We call it like Music 01. You take this, if you're interested, then you can move on to Music 101, because you should learn all that theory. If you have any interest in it, you should learn those things, but we just don't feel like you should start there.
I mean, 2 years ago when you were giving me the intro sort of into what you were imagining this was going to end up looking like, I thought it was such a inspired idea because I think about that time, or maybe a year or two before, I had read in something online somewhere in the web about how it was a really low percentage of adults that could actually keep a tempo, that could clap to a beat, that understood like how to clap when other people are clapping. And then whatever it was that I read, there were a bunch of videos of like live concerts, kind of watching a crowd drift, like when the acapella happened or when the drums stopped, watching a crowd like not be able to keep up with one another, and it just turns into like complete chaos. And so I thought, you know, what a great way to just introduce everyone, or at like a very young age, or even adults too, because having looked at it, I mean, it's a brilliant way to assemble all this stuff together. But that there was never anything that I had seen that a very, very, like you're talking about, '01 intro to music that explains this is what a tempo is, and this is how you keep one, and then this is how you build on those foundational elements. And then I thought that Happy was such an obvious choice for a song, because it's so simple and so consistent and so obvious and so kind of bouncy. So can you talk a little bit, and I'm curious a little bit about what kind of access did you guys have to the pieces of Happy, right? Like the instrumental versions, the hi-hats, the drums, the snares. I'm guessing you had all of the pieces and you all had to program them and make them fit. What did that process look like, from samples to iBook to everything? What was the tech there?
So the beauty of Happy is that Pharrell created it, like he wrote it in Logic, which Logic and GarageBand they're the same program, essentially. They're the same engine. Logic just gives you like some more professional level features, but he could have written it in GarageBand for everything that he used. He may as well have written it in GarageBand. The sounds are there. Everything he needs is right there in GarageBand. Just happens that Logic is the one he has on his computer. But if he had opened GarageBand, he could have done the same thing there. And when Brent went to him with the idea, you know, he pitched the idea and, you know, asked him, said, hey, you know, I'd like to be able to take the sessions, and just, he didn't really know where it was going to go yet, but he had an idea and he wanted to start picking it apart and taking it apart. So, you know, Pharrell gave us access to that stuff, and, you know, really awesome. And, you know, I mean, you can't thank him enough, because he has to take a chance to be willing to put his stuff out there in the world the way that it goes out there in these sessions. Mm-hmm. Everything is broken down, and the sessions don't look much different than what you get for GarageBand. Right.
And that was like one of the things I remember a few years ago, Trent Reznor like open sourced a lot of his music, right? Like they took the raw source files from Reason or from something else and basically split tracks apart and let the world remix like a song or an album or something. And so
he had a contest or something around it.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. It was a couple of years ago where I'm sort of, I'd have to look it up, but I remember like as a DJ, when I was learning how to spin records and how to cut vinyl and how to scratch, one of the things was like, it would be really excellent to just have the raw cut. I want the beat, I want the snare, I want the acapella. I always wanted that, like the tracks separated, because that's like where you get the best sound out of, but you always end up with like a 12-inch vinyl or an instrumental. You end up having to splice it or cut it with software. And so it's neat to think that, you know, you've got the raw source of Happy or a song, even though it is just GarageBand or Logic or whatever, but to know that like you buy the iBook and then you're playing with basically, it sounds like exactly what Pharrell was playing with, and you have access to all of the like original source for like one of like popular music's most popular songs in the past however many years. So it's neat.
Really, of all time, if you try to measure it, right? I mean, by anything measurable, it's going to be huge for so long because it's tied to this movie, and the movies are super successful, and you know, now there's even the third one out now. But there's two GarageBand projects that you get with it, and the projects, like one of them is called Live Loops, and it's like cell based, and it's literally like a big spreadsheet, and each row is an instrument and each column is a section of the song. You can trigger a whole section of the song, or you can just trigger individual elements. There's DJ effects built into that. So even if you have no interest in music, but you do have interest in, or playing music, but you have interest in DJing, there's some really cool things to, if you want to do a remix of Happy, like everything is there for you to do that.
Right.
Like, 100%.
So how many times within the past 2 years have you listened to Happy?
Have I had to?
Not had to, but
yeah.
I bet you've listened to it like a million times, right? Like,
it's hard to say. Yeah, it's really hard to say.
It's going through your head right now. I know it.
I mean, I literally, like, when they say name that tune, and I can name that tune and, X amount of notes, I hear that first, like, dun, and I know it. But I'm probably not unique in that, though. And Pharrell does that. He does this like 4-punch hit. You'll hear it on a lot of his music, but it's sort of his calling card. So when you hear that 4 hit at the beginning, you like, here's Pharrell.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the process of you being the client and working with Modern Tribe and what that process was about. Because we know from my interactions with other agencies, there's you got to do the scope and you got to do all the projections and all this other stuff that comes with consulting and agency work. What was it like for you to be the client?
It was super cool. I mean, really, for me, it came down to that I wanted to work with Travis at the beginning. That's really the only thing I wanted. I actually asked John to work with me on this too, but John wasn't interested. He was the first person I asked.
That is not true. That is not true. That is not.
And look where John's ended up.
It was literally the most interesting thing that there could be ever to work on.
Did I not ask you to work on it with me?
You did. You were very polite and I was super stoked and excited, but I was trying to do the core thing, right? Like, I was chasing a different dream instead of listening to you. So I clearly, I mean, it's nice to see what could have been, right?
So one thing that I learned in this whole process is when I ask somebody about a project like this, if they don't say hell yes to me, then I just assume it to be no. And there are other people that I reached out to and like asked them like, hey, would you be interested in this? And they're like, I don't know, like, send me over some more details and I'll check it out. And I was like, no, it's cool. It's not that kind of project. Like, if your heart's not into this 100%, then it wouldn't be what it is right now. So I wanted to work with Travis. I've worked with Travis on, many things, like through the WordPress community. We organized a WordCamp together. We did Prestige conference stuff together. He's a great designer. And I just love his style and his taste, and he's also a musician. So it just really felt like a natural fit. But, I brought it to these guys, and, like I said, I learned a lot, but I think that it was probably, I think the whole overall experience was different because in some ways I'd probably serve some of the functions that Modern Tribe would normally do. Mm-hmm. But I tried to be the best client I could be. The client that I would want to see that I've never seen. I tried to deliver things as much as I could like that. But I don't know, maybe, I think it was, I just brought them ideas, and we have a quote at the back of the book. I don't remember it verbatim, but it's like the idea that, like, tell people what you need done and then let them surprise you. And I think that our work with Modern Tribe on this project was 100% that.
And so, Travis, how good of a client was Kiko?
Well, I've got to work with Kiko before, so unsurprisingly fun. I mean, I think Kiko said it well. I mean, I think, like, you approach a project like this, right? And it's about saying things like hell yeah, like this is fun, this is exciting. It probably lends itself pretty well that we at Modern Tribe have a saying that's just heck yeah, like it's our thing. It's kind of one of our mantras, like heck yeah, like we're excited about projects like this. We're excited about working with cool clients on challenging and unique things, and this was certainly no exception. I mean, first of all, yeah, I mean, it was exciting, one, to be able to work with Kiko again on another project, two, to have it be like knowing full well, like getting into it, that it would be a full-on project. Like, Kiko and I have had fun, like, collaborating on some things within the WordPress space, like you said, on conferences and putting together things like that. A lot of those, not due to trying, but just simply due to other client work taking priority over things like putting on, conferences. Like, this was a full thing that we really got to devote all of our energy to, along with Kiko and Brent's. So yeah, I mean, just super fun. Like, the collaboration process that we were able to tackle together was a lot of was a lot of work, and it was a lot of like meetings. We met with Kiko and Brent, I mean, pretty much every week throughout the last like almost year and a half. We meet with our clients almost every week, status meetings, updates, showing off designs, showing off code. Like, it's just how we operate. But like, it was always kind of fun going into that meeting, like knowing, oh yeah, like we're going to meet with Brent and Kiko. We're going to show them something really cool. We're going to walk through, you know, the updates that we're doing to the book or the design process. Like, it was one of those things that you kind of look forward to every week. And not just like the fact that Pharrell is attached to it, which like I was all about, like, that's awesome. But just the fact that like Brent and Kiko were fun to work with and easy to work with in the way that we understood each other, I think. And I think that kind of comes down to having worked in the past together, but also like being musicians and like knowing this process and like really digging into this content together. It was just super fun.
That's one of the things that our listeners cannot see the way that Jeff and I can see it right now, is that both of you have guitars in the background. Like, if you guys weren't going to work together on this, I don't have any guitars in the background. Like, I would much rather enjoy the results of what you guys were able to collaborate on than get in the way trying to, like, you know, geek out over working on something for Pharrell. So I'm happy that you guys were.
It's more than that, though. It's more than that, because while, like, you know, I mean, from my perspective, like, working with Tribe was awesome, and I would have had Tribe do everything if like we had this unlimited pot of money. But like, I had to run kind of like a little bit of like a skunk works thing on the side too, because we were trying to, like, another thing with iBooks Author is you can put media into there. So you can put audio. They have like built-in widgets that you can add with audio or, you know, video. There's like galleries, and we used a lot of those. But they also let you put HTML5 widgets in, and that is what takes the book to the next level. But we didn't know what we were going to be able to do with that. Like, it sounds great. Like, oh, you can just put HTML5 widgets in there. And ultimately, that's what it turns out to be. You could anything you can do on the web, you can pretty much do there. But we found a bug early that sort of threw us off the path. It was like a really strange bug. And it was that when you try to play audio files in a widget, the extension, you have to take the extension off. So if it's like bassdrum.mp4, you have to name it just bass drum, because something was getting goofy. It'll be fixed, I'm sure, in iBooks Author in the next update. But it threw us off the path, thinking that we couldn't make audio work, because who would try that? I mean, nobody, you know? And so it's like, there were some weird things like that. So I worked with several developers, like just trying to like prove some concepts. And but it really worked well, because we would get something to work, and then I could bring it back to Travis and say, hey, here's what we have working. Can you kind of skin this for us? But it would have probably been cost prohibitive to go down these dead ends trying to, you know, with the QA process and everything that happens when you work with an agency, that, you know, we might not have been able to do it. We definitely couldn't have done it for the numbers we did it for, but, you know, so there was a little bit of that had to happen too. So there's a lot of people that contributed. I mean, the crazy thing is the people that contributed that I know through WordPress. It's pretty awesome to me, because I would never ask anybody to work on it. It's not because I think like, hey, John, you're a great WordPress developer. It's because I think, hey, John, you have great ideas. And whenever I talk to you, I have amazing conversation, and I feel smarter after I have a conversation with you. And that's what's more important to me than like, hey, what's your musical ability to be able to help us produce this book? Because honestly, I went to music school 25 years ago, and about 22 and a half years ago, I decided I did not want to make a career in music, and I have not made a career in music. So, but I needed to leave music to be able to come back at music with a fresh lens, to be able to do it a different way. So you need people with all different perspectives to do something that's different.
So within the last 2 years, is there any lifelong lessons that you'll take with you that you could share with our audience from this experience?
Well, I mean, there's a couple right there, ready. The one, right? If it's not hell yes, it's no. If don't hire dinosaurs to do innovative work. You know, people that have been doing things the same way over and over again, don't hire them to do something that's revolutionary, because if they had the idea to do that, they would have probably already done it. Those are a couple for me. I don't know, Trav, you have any good one-liners from this?
3 cheers for the millennials.
I mean, I think You know, I think something like we really try to embody at Tribe, and I think this project it embodies it as well, is to live well and do good work. I mean, it's something that we stand by, we live by. We're growing like crazy at Tribe right now, and we're trying consistently to try to find that balance between living well and doing good work. And I think, like Kiko, you embody that as well. Like, we work really hard, but we also live well. You know, like, we have fun. We're able to do things. We're able to, like, you know, ride motorized skateboards and you know, play music and have fun building stuff. I don't know. It's just like, I think projects like this allow you to really find respect and balance between working really hard at something, but also finding the time to really enjoy, you know, the everything else that's kind of surrounds you.
I think for as long as I have known the both of you in like in the WordPress community, when I think of people that put a heavy emphasis on just like a healthy life balance about like everything. Like, yes, WordPress is great, and yes, working is fun, and you get to do cool stuff, but y'all have always been very open about the hobbies that you're into that have nothing to do with computers or the web, if it's music or mountain biking or jujitsu or whatever it is. Like, you've been very open about sharing your history and story and how those things have positively influenced other aspects of your lives that may or may not involve work. So it seems like a natural fit for the two of you to continue to collaborate and jam on really awesome things. It's really super cool.
One of the hobbies Kiko has that I enjoy is watching sporting events from Epic Seats. That's a great hobby to have.
It's a fun hobby, definitely. Yeah, when I was in the military, in the Air Force, they pushed like this idea of the whole person concept. And it was like when you came time for like your annual review, they looked at like what you did for community service. They looked at what you did athletically, how you did on your, you know, PT tests, how you were doing in like professional education, like how you were aspiring to be better at your job, what you were doing in personal development, were you going to college and taking classes, and all of these things all weighed into how they rated you. And you couldn't be like this, like one faceted kind of person. They didn't care that you were great at your job only. If you didn't embody that whole person concept, you never really would go far in the Air Force, especially.
So with this being such a major project, I know you have a daughter that recently graduated. How did you balance the whole life concept? I mean, were you constantly thinking about the next thing, the next milestone? I mean, were you dealing with phone calls at midnight or 9 a.m. or whatever? And how'd you deal with the 3-hour time zone difference sometimes when you were in Jersey and you had to be on a meeting with people in Cupertino?
And did you know this was going to take 2 years? I mean, when we sat down in Miami in 2015, I don't think that I asked you, what's the timeline on this? So yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no way. When I first got hired into this project, it was to do their website, actually. This was like, but I had already been like consulting on the project already, like, you know, it's kind of part-time. And then Brent brought me to the guys in Miami, like the same weekend as WordCamp Miami. So it was really like perfect. I got to fly there, went to WordCamp, and then took a day and just went and did, you know, met with the investors and stuff. But it was originally to do the website, and they wanted to launch this thing in like, I think April of last year. So, you know, and they asked me like, hey, can you make this happen by April? And like, sure, I can make it happen by April, but it would have taken, you know, a monumental effort, and it would have never been what it is today. And, you know, and then we dug in and we started looking at the holes, and there was a lot of pressure from, you know, people to put out sort of an MVP. And I get that concept, and I just think that there's like really no, like, there's no system that works for everybody or for every situation. You know, like, I love open source, but I also love that Apple is a closed platform at the same time. So but I think, you know, I forget, what was I saying right before that?
So the concept of release 1.0 and iterate often.
Oh, yeah. So, no, well, you have to, like, when you're going to put something like this out that's like for education, you're going to get feedback when you put it out. And if I'm going to put something out that is going to get feedback, I have to be able to stand behind what I'm putting out 100% in my mind. If I put it out and then you give me some feedback and I say, oh, I completely agree with what you're saying, then I'm just wasting everybody's time in this whole thing. And I just believe with a product, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And we see it in WordPress too, where people looked at WordPress 10 years ago, and in their mind, it hasn't matured at all from then, because that's what it was then. So that's what it must still be, right?
I think the iterate often philosophy is like a total luxury that can easily be taken for granted and taken advantage of. If you think back to things from, I mean, not too far ago history, video games came on a disc or in a cart, where that was the game. The game never changed or got better. That just was what it was until the end of time. And some of the best video games in the world to this day are exactly what they were 30 years ago. And there was never a V1.1 of those video games, but we have the opportunity to say, oh, we can do it in the next version. We can do it in the next version. We can do it in the next version. And if you continue to do that, you never, ever, ever ship. You never get it done. It's never, ever good enough. So there must be something kind of nice about spending 2 years on something and having it be close enough to your imagination and your vision to let it go and not really think about it too often. So is there going to be a subsequent bug fixes and things? Does it need stuff, or is it pretty polished already?
I think, I mean, it's polished from our perspective, but there's been a couple like grammar things that we've found. So I think we've already pushed like 2 updates. We pushed updates before it even like shipped. I think it was in the system, and we pushed some updates, but there'll be some updates for it. Absolutely. And, you know, I don't think that, I'm not 100% with it right now. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's, you know, it's good enough. You know, good enough is good enough. It's good enough to be able to have like serious conversations with people that teach and talk about like how we teach music and how we can use music to teach other subjects. And I think that it's good for that. I think it can still, like, there's like UI things that have to get better. We built it for the iPad, but it works on the Mac and it works on anything that runs iBooks. So it works on the phone as well, but it's not a responsive sandbox. So, you know, I mean, I guess it's responsive in that it just gets from big to small, but it doesn't really mean that like what you make for the iPad isn't going to, you know, the touch spots aren't going to be great for the phone. So there's some things we can do to improve there as well. And it's a template, and it's a project that, you know, that we showcase what we want to do. And now it's a matter of taking this project and turning it into a business. So, you know, it's kind of the next step. But
well, it's like one of the first books that I've seen, one of the first iBooks for sure, that sort of feels like an interactive pop-up book for like modern awesome content. Like every other book that I've downloaded or read or used, or it's like even mildly interactive, wasn't nearly as like contextually deep as what I feel like you guys were able to put together with this, because if it's introduced to the right audience that is really into it, or even with a teacher or with the right kids or adults that are willing to read through it, it's not even like it's not hard to understand. It's super fun to play with, and it's like it's completely relevant to like everything that makes the iPad fun to play with or read with or anything else. Like, I hope that, do you guys have other stuff lined up? What's next? I mean, if this is just the first thing, and if the idea is to build a brand or a business around it, then what's next? I mean, there's Pharrell has, you know, a vault of songs, and there's more than just Pharrell, I suppose, too, right? So.
Yeah, well, Pharrell really doesn't, like, he actually didn't even want us to use the song Happy. He just really, he's a guy that's always looking forward. He doesn't look back. He doesn't, you know, you're never going to see him don the hat again, you know, like all that stuff. He lets it go and he just moves past it, and he doesn't like to go back. But he, you know, he doesn't want it to be about him. And so much so that he's willing to say, and, you know, I think that we can probably all relate with that on some level. You know, he's not a self-promoter. It's not about putting his song forward, but, you know, we told him like, hey, this song is like perfect for kids, because it just doesn't alienate anybody. And there's very few songs like that. So, you know, that's we have to do some curation on, you know, what songs are next. You know, where do we want to make the push? Do we want to make the push into schools? It's really a tough climb. Or do we want to just focus on, you know, direct to consumers, you know, buy this book, let's have a, you know, a big catalog. So, you know, we have to work those things out. There's funding that needs to be secured to be able to do something on that scale. It's much different doing a project to having a serious business where we're putting out, you know, many of these books. But we think we did a great job. We're very happy with what it is, and, you know, we would love to do more.
Well, public schools are tough too, because not every public school is going to have the budget to be able to afford to roll out 100 iPads or 10 iPads even necessarily for like music students or anything else. And then purchasing or licensing the book itself, or 10 copies of it, or whatever you need for an educational license, is also not always going to be super cheap. And so I think you're right that it's an uphill battle, but the quality of the content is just like so far superior than what you would get in any other format that hopefully, I really hope it's something that we do see catch on, because I remember when I was learning how to count beats, or how to figure out what like beats per minute actually were, and how to mix music and blend stuff. It was like a manual process of learning, like, and there's a slight tangent, which is, you know, like why I'm excited to talk to you guys about this. But Grandmaster Flash has a video on YouTube, and maybe a special on Netflix, I think too, of like how he learned how to DJ, and like the techniques he had to go through to learn how to count beats and spin records, and how many times around to, you know, juggle beats and things like that. And I remember going through that. I mean, I was probably 12 years old, but to have a tool that just helps you with that, like to guide students or kids through the process of like, this is how you do this, and to speed up that education would have saved me a year worth of like counting beats and figuring out how songs were the same speed and all those things. So
I mean, Pharrell, I think what Pharrell says is once you know a song, you're halfway there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was talking about the idea that like we deconstruct the song, so we don't have to get you like familiar with the content. You're already familiar with the content. So we can start there, and now let's just break it down, something that you already know and, you know, feel. And I mean, it was super cool. Like we did workshops last week, and like we have people clapping along, you know, and made the same jokes, you know, like don't clap on the 1 and 3. You don't want to be that person, you know, where so we had like half the room clapping the snare drum and the other half clapping the bass drum at tempo. And the bass drum at tempo is a little bit hard, but if you just relax and listen to it, instead of trying to think about all the counting and all these things that are happening, just feel it and be able to mock it. And people can do it. And we asked people at the beginning of the workshop, it was all teachers. So how many of you would like to teach music or use music to teach, but are intimidated by it? And literally, right, Travis, the whole room raised their hand.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 1 hour together, we said, how many of you feel like you can use a product like this to teach music? And how many of you had fun in this session? The whole room raised their hand.
Yep. And how many people from other subject areas could utilize this content for their subject? And that's not just music. Like, it's really neat to, and I think that's something that always kind of inspired me about Kiko and Brent's mission is to really like figure out how this isn't just a music learning tool. It's a full STEM learning tool. Like, students can learn math, they can learn history. Like, there's portions of the book that really give weight to other subject areas through like this evolution of learning music, which is actually just really kind of neat to see. Because I think, like we talked about at the beginning, like music education needs that, because a lot of kids, middle school and younger, I mean, high school students for sure, like they don't have dedicated music programs anymore in a lot of areas of the US for sure, and probably abroad. But like to be able to use something like this and a brand like Pharrell and a name like Pharrell attached to it and kind of popular music is really kind of inventive and cool to see. So I hope, I mean, I don't know, maybe selfishly, but I really hope that it continues to move forward and gain traction in those areas, because I think there's ways to continue to refine something like this to make it even better for more people and more students across hopefully the world. But
there's another piece to this too. There's an iTunes University companion to it, and there's a link to it in the forward of the book. And you can go there, and there's some sample lessons on how to use music to teach other subjects. There's some little sample pieces. We did an English one with all the teachers we worked with last week, and we just took the lyrics and like took out happy and put like add, emotion here. It's like a Mad Lib, and people like. In 1 hour, we went through the book with them. We had them rewrite their own lyrics to Happy and record them on the iPad with little, white Apple headphones. And I mean, people were doing it. I was like, there's no way people are going to sing this, but they were doing it.
And there was people that
GarageBand gives you the ability to do like a chipmunk voice or whatever too. So if you're like shy about it, you can, be a monster or whatever. And
that's cool.
So before we wrap it up, tell us a little bit about, we'll go with, I know Travis was there. Kiko was on stage. You guys were unveiling this to the big crowd down in, was it Austin? San Antonio, I think it was. Tell us a little bit, Travis, on how you prepared for launch day, and did you guys experience any hiccups during launch day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for sure, a lot of coordination had to go into this. The site is a companion site. It's fairly simple when it comes to, the straightforwardness of functionality on the site. It's informational. We gather some information from some Gravity forms for sure, and we've got post and single loop and stuff like that. But it's the impressive nature of the site is simply on front end design, animation, stuff like that. But the challenge was actually trying to figure out some of this companion file stuff that Kiko talked about. The site itself is hosted on WP Engine, but we had to figure out a solution for where to host these companion files and how we can actually get users that purchase the book the files, because these files are pretty large GarageBand files. I don't know, Kiko, they're like 50,
6
100
megabytes. No, they're like 6 megabytes each, 6 or 7. They're under 10. Yeah. We compressed them down. Yeah, we started around 50, and that wasn't going to work.
So we had to kind of figure out like what's the best method for this. I mean, a lot of email clients are not going to accept huge files. So we actually integrated a form into the book. So a form hits an AWS server. That server then delivers the files via email actually to the email client on the iPad, right? So just having some coordination, but surprisingly no hiccups, Jeff, and it was like a fair amount of just coordination on our side, coordination in Slack about when we're going to launch, how we're going to launch, getting it set up and ready for any hits of a heavy amount of traffic on the hosting side, on the WP Engine side, but also on the of course on the AWS server side. So we utilize a plugin. I think that Peter Chester, one of the owners at Tribe, wrote. It's called Glomar. It's our own little hidden plugin that hides our production sites or anything that's in production or even staging from being indexed, being viewable. So just coordinating with the team, like when are we going to launch this thing? Who's going to be responsible? I think we had even a couple final deployments within a couple hours of the launch, just kind of being there. Having Kiko and Brent look at the site, kind of testing on mobile, having some Apple individuals, that are well-respected people kind of take a look at it, and making sure that we kind of coordinated some of those last-minute things. Because some of the site work, I mean, to be honest, with all the book stuff and everything going on in the world of Tuniversity, like there was a lot to do within the last, I don't know, Kiko, like 2 weeks. Like there was a lot of work that went into the last couple weeks of this thing.
The last 10%.
Yeah, I mean,
everything kind of finalizes at the last minute, at the same time. Yep. Like the book's final, the files are final. Like, all right, now let's figure this all out.
Yep.
So what was it like for you, Kiko, to have Travis there at your side to handle the launch and to handle anything that may come up?
It was the first time I've ever launched anything, we all say oh, we shipped, we launched, we did all these things, but it was the first time I've ever had to do a coordinated, we were making believe we're Apple, let's launch the website when we're on stage, as close to that as possible, and the book is live right now, and it was fun to do that. But for me, having Travis there was, I mean, it was awesome. We brought Travis, and there was a videographer there as well, and you know, try to capture some of this stuff too, to just have it for posterity and B-roll in the future. Start building a catalog of that type of thing too. And it was just really nice to have them there. My daughter was there too, to like, you know, just like fend off any like stupid little things that happened, and it really just made it a much more relaxing experience all the way through. But it was nice because we did like the keynote presentation like the first day, and then had workshops each of the days. But once the keynote presentation was over, it was like, all right, workshops are easy, like, 'cause these are fun. Like, we want people smiling and having a great time. So it was a lot more raucous kind of environment than the keynote. But once the keynote was done, then I just felt like, you know, let my hair down a little bit and relax.
Yeah, let your hair down. For our listeners out there, I don't see much hair in Kiko. So awesome, man. It's glad to hear. I mean, everything I've read so far about Tuniversity on the web has been glowing reviews. Everybody seems to like it, enjoy it, and really the way it just kind of revolutionary way of music education. You guys seem to have hit it out the ballpark.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, we feel like it really hits the mark.
So before we wrap it up here, John, any last questions here about the project you want to know about?
Well, what time is it now? I mean, we've got another hour.
Oh,
No? Okay.
Hey, we're here. Whatever you want to know. Because it's hard once you're inside. You're so inside the project, you don't know what people want to know, because like the things I think that are really a big deal, like most people probably don't care about them, but they like wow, it took us forever to put that keyboard into the book, like, and
right.
You know.
No, I want to know what's next. I want to know what's the next, who's the next, who do we get to look forward to for the next book? What song?
It's not locked in. So I mean, if I couldn't even tell you if I knew, but I don't know. So it's really hard to say. I mean, there's some things out there, but
yeah.
Well, I mean, based on
it's gonna be somebody that, like, the music is gonna be clean. It's gonna work. Yep. It's gonna have to be able to, you know, you understand kind of what the way we're trying to teach. It has to be something that we can break down very simply. And we only want to deal with songs that are huge songs, because it's really it's a tough enough climb already. But we want to have songs that people know, like Pharrell said, like, you know, we want to already meet them halfway, that they know these songs, and now we'll just help them understand them better.
Well, knowing how Happy works, are there any other songs that you can think of off the top of your head that you think would work well in this system?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, but the big thing comes down to language. I think it really lends itself more to like a hip hop style of music, because it's like electronically created. So it's a little simpler to do that. I mean, if we were to go back to like 80s music, which again, then it doesn't have as much innuendo in it, and it's a little easier, but we'd have to sort of replace instruments with more of an electronic sounding instrument, which could be cool too, but it's just really tough. Like, you know, I mean, like a guy like Justin Timberlake, you know, I love Justin Timberlake. He has so many great songs. You know, a song like Sexy Back would really lend itself to this type of learning very well. But you know, how many parents are going to be upset about, you know, I'm bringing Sexy Back, you know? It's a great song. And I think the parents that might even complain about it probably love the song too. But do you want your third grader to be learning through that? You know, it's really a tough thing. And
I think
a lot of hip hop has like these weird things. You don't even know what these things mean, but they mean some weird thing in the underground. You don't want to attach your company to.
You got to go with T Swift, man.
Yeah, Taylor Swift would be amazing.
I think,
if
like,
you're listening, Taylor, give me a call.
That's right, Taylor Swift.
A bunch of Foo Fighters tracks would be good too, but yeah, acoustic stuff would be really hard. They'd really have to replay every piece special to get
with the string
good riffs and
with the string instruments. It's more of a process, I think, to do string instruments for sure.
It has to be certain types of songs. Like it has to be able to be playable on like there's like a software guitar on the iPad, and it's great. And we can program in the chords, and with the track, if you switch to the smart guitar, you have all of the chords to Happy like already programmed there for you. And we can do that for you, where you can just strum the chords, but it just has to be a song that's clean. It has to be a song, you know, at least at the beginning, you know, maybe we can mix a, you know, a Sexy Back in every, you know, 1 out of every 10 or something, but we just have to, you know, it's tough. We have one right now, and Happy's a tough one to follow up. There's the song that I wanted to do next was another Pharrell song. I wanted to do the song Freedom, because I feel like it has such a positive message. The song didn't, you know, it didn't have the acclaim that Happy did, but I think the message is maybe even more powerful, especially in our, you know, current state of the world. I think though, you know, if you listen to that song Freedom, like it hits home. And I think that it could really, you know, it could be something that really affects education, you know, or people in school, but there's no way Pharrell's going to let us do another, you know, another song of his next. So you know, it's just really hard. It's a very, it's a fluid situation, I guess.
A friend of mine that I share an office with, we were going back through some old music and some old favorite songs of ours from, you know, the 90s, 80s, that kind of thing. And it got me thinking about, obviously, today's show, but like Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Jazzy Jeff was like clean music, fun, bouncy, happy, and like danceable, and the raps were clean.
And they're timeless, right? Parents still don't understand.
Right. They still don't understand. Right. There's like so many cool, but the problem I think with some of those is like for Tuniversity is there's a lot of samples. There's a lot of like music that isn't theirs.
It's not their music.
It's not a thing you can just build in GarageBand. That's one of the things like when you say that Pharrell referred to this as like deconstructing Happy, there's a whole, if you can basically search for, like on YouTube for deconstructing like any music. Daft Punk specifically is like interesting to watch people like recreate a bunch of Daft Punk songs from the original samples, where they basically say like, here's this 12-inch record from Edwin Bird's song, some 70s funk thing, and they just take the like cut, and you're like, whoa, and they just loop it and they put it through, and you're like, holy crap, that's totally the sample from one little piece. And so to be able to do that with something that you recognize, like Happy, for me, it brings kids and adults and everyone into the like subculture genre of like the nuanced sample pieces of music that are like rattling around in my head constantly all the time. Because all those little sounds and samples and cuts, like the little instruments, like it's, like you said, Pharrell has that boom, 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 4-beat intro on every track all the time. You instantly know it's Pharrell when you hear it. So I don't think that your average listener of music recognizes that as like a signature. They know it, they're familiar with it, but they don't see it as the signature that it is. So having a book that explains to people all these little things is just a great way to learn. It's such a cool way to introduce people to just the subtlety and the art of music and production and all of it.
We've talked a lot about the process of making it, but we really haven't like delved too far into like what is in the book, really. Like, so it like breaks into 3 chapters, and the first chapter, I always call it Inside the Mind of the Creator. And we let Pharrell tell you in video, like his inspiration for the song, how he writes lyrics, because for us to write it, it's like, you know, now it's like, it's coming through us and it's been tainted in some sort of way. It's not straight from the source. So we have the videos from him, let him tell you. And then the third section in the first chapter is called Creative Starting Points, which that's the piece that I think really like demystifies things for me. It's when you have like nothing down, where did you start? Did you have a poem? Did you have an idea for like a concept? Did you have some chords on a guitar, chords on a piano? Or for Pharrell, it's the beat. And you get to hear, you get to see his workflow, right? It's like, you know, I mean, we're all web guys. We all have different workflows. Well, singers and songwriters are exactly the same. But you'll find that they go to the same workflow quite often. So, you know, it's like you get to sit side saddle with Pharrell in the studio essentially and see his process and see how he builds it up. And then we break it down in the second chapter. First, I call it like a vertical deconstruction. It's like the intro, you know, that 4-hit, the chorus, the verse, all these pieces, and how you create like kind of a pattern of all these parts to make a full song. And then in the third chapter is where we get into the, you know, put it back together. First, you know, with GarageBand live loops, which is so non-threatening at all. You don't have to perform anything. You just have to be able to click a cell and it keeps time for you. Everything always sounds in time perfectly. Very, very simple. Anybody can do it. And then you get into, you know, actually recording your own version of the song, which is also super, super simple. We really make it like simple recipe. We have on every page with instruction like that, we have a numbered set of instructions. We have a gallery that you can swipe through that shows you visually each step, numbered. It says step 1, and it's a visual depiction of where those words are telling you to touch. And then there's also a video there if you don't want to read, or you can't read, or, you know, whatever, you just want somebody to explain it to you and you want to watch somebody do it. The videos are there as well. And by the end, you learn all the things you need to learn to be able to record your own music. You learn how to create tracks, you learn how to recreate, you know, record software instruments. We teach you how to play the bass line on the keyboard right on the iPad. You take all these things and you can build something yourself, and you can get creative. You can use Pharrell stuff and, you know, try to remix that at first, but you can definitely just start with a blank session after that and start getting ideas out and building it one at a time.
Well, boy, how far we've come from watching children's television and watching a ball bounce on the words.
No kidding, right?
But that's the bouncing ball is kind of how we teach it, though. Like, it's like a visual piece that, like, you watch essentially the light blink and you just count along and clap along with it. But it's very much like a bouncing ball. I use that analogy a lot, actually.
So the two of you have, like, you're into music. You've at least you're artistically inclined. You're creative. You've been clearly you've realized this is a passion and a thing that you guys are actively, like, nurturing and learning and creating awesome stuff. Like, what was your takeaway from this as artists or as creators? What do you take away from launching this into the next project? Was there anything that you learned about music or yourself or your own creative process? I mean, Kiko, even you, as your first time kind of being a real bigwig project manager client type person. I mean, what for our listeners, what was the takeaway here? What do you take into the next SaaS project, WordPress plugin, client interaction? I mean, what was the takeaway for you guys?
Trav, you go first.
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I think, and maybe it's just because Kiko and I and Brent and honestly, like, the full Tribe team work so well together. I think there's something that can be said, right? And people that work at agencies or people that do this type of work on a daily basis, working with clients, essentially, like working on big projects, small projects, whatever you're working on. Like, there are tough days. There are tough. You have a lot of really difficult things, I think, that you are challenged by on a daily basis. Like, how do I, like, as a strategist, plan a huge project? How do I architect this, like, big thing from scratch? As a designer, how do I creatively think of these really rad ideas that are going to impress thousands and thousands of people? As a developer, how do I solve the right code problems and write, you know, efficient code on the front end and beautiful code? And how do I architect something on the back end? Like, there's so many challenges, I think, that you run into on a daily basis. And I think, like I said, not just because Kiko and Brent and I and the team worked so well together and really understood each other, but I think there's sincerely something to be said about approaching those problems that you run into on a daily basis, as difficult as they may be, with a positive outlook. Like, and it honestly goes so friggin' far. And even if there are issues, and even if there are frustrations on the client side, and even if you're running into something that's really, really dementing your workflow, yourself, whatever you're doing, the positivity side of things, like, honestly, can change things around. I truly believe that. And I think that if there are ways to overcome those challenges, it is approaching things in that way. And it really came to light here. And because I think we all worked so well together in a positive nature, in a positive way, even with tough deadlines and people to please on Kiko's side and on our side, and investors and I mean, Pharrell being involved in this project, like, how like rad is that? Like, our designers and the creative team needing to come up with something that, you know, he's going to see, he's going to be involved with, he's going to need to, you know, prove is I think something that's definitely a takeaway on a project like this.
What about you, Kiko?
For me, it really comes down to, like, working on things you're passionate about. Like, it makes such a big difference. You know, we've all worked on client projects that, you know, we took the job because we needed the money and, you know, we had an opening or whatever. And you do the best you can. And it's not to say that you, like, phone it in, but when you're passionate about something, it comes out totally different than, you know, it's the thing you wake up thinking about, and, you know, you're trying to go to sleep at night and you're like, oh my God, how could I do this differently? Because there were some huge technical hurdles to come up over for this. And you know, it's like work on things you're passionate about with people that you, in the credits section, if you look through the credits, like it's amazing how many people that like we thanked for this. It's crazy. But there's the quote there, and it's like a MacArthur quote. And it's just that idea to like tell people what you need to get done, and then trust them to surprise you in this. And yeah, that's really been the huge takeaway for me, is to be more selective about the things I work on. And I've worked on a lot of projects that I've loved in the past that weren't as forward, you know, as publicly facing. You know, oftentimes my projects are helping people with like a business workflow that, to me, it's super exciting, like trying to solve this problem. You know, we're cutting staffing by 25%, and how can we be more effective? You know, I love those kinds of things, but it's not as exciting to talk about, you know. Right. So it's been cool to work on something that people are also passionate about, and, you know, make the world a better place, I think, with this project. And not many things that I get to work on that I really feel that 100% that, you know, this could really change the world.
And it's sort of unique with you because we talked a bit about this in 2015. You're like, you're a solo worker, right? We even talked about why you prefer to work sort of alone and not work at a development agency, which there are many in the WordPress ecosystem. And within the last 2 years, you've worked really hard on this project. I mean, how do you feel emotionally, physically? Are you drained, or are you already gearing up for the next project on, I don't know, Wednesday?
Well, I'm super tired. I'm super drained. And I'm flying to Montreal tomorrow to meet with a new prospective client. So
there we go.
I guess all the above, really. But I mean, I'm working on a movie too that I've been working on for longer than this project. And this project, I wanted to have the movie done this year because it's about my hometown, and the town turned 150 this year. So I really wanted to be able to launch it with that, you know, coincide it with that anniversary. But this project just really came in and kind of took over my life in that way. And I also, like you said, I have a daughter just graduated high school. She graduated high school on the Friday. Her party was on Saturday. We flew to San Antonio Sunday morning, launched the product on Monday. So, I mean, it was like, it's been sort of a crazy little chunk of time right now. But so I'm going to go up, and this, you know, these people that I'm meeting with in Montreal, they've been waiting for me. Like, they started talking to me before this Tuniversity project even started. Wow. So they've been waiting for me for this long. So I feel like I owe it to them to, you know, get there and, you know, take a look at this project as soon as I can.
They must really want you if they're willing to wait 2 years for you.
I guess so. So now I feel sort of obligated. I got to get up there. I've never been to Montreal too, so it should be fun. And yeah, I mean, so I don't know what the future holds. I don't know that I say I like working alone. I think that it's really hard to find the right people to work with. And I think that, especially if you try to do it like locally, you know, I've talked to Jake Goldman a lot about this, and he has this philosophy of like, hire the best candidate. Don't hire the best candidate that lives in your geographical region. You know, like, he's sort of not limited by that. And I think that, you know, you just have to be ready to take that on. And I like to make things. I like to create things. I like to solve problems. And when I started to hire people, the problems I was solving was finding work for them to do, instead of like, you know, finding really, really interesting problems. So, I mean, in a perfect world, I would work with a team of people that like had this project queued up for me. Like, oh, hey, you're done with that. Like, take a couple of weeks off and then let's get into the next one, because then I wouldn't have to find them. But the projects I've worked on are pretty diverse. I can't imagine, you know, anybody having all those things ready for me. I just haven't found that situation. And, you know, the idea of hiring people, I learned pretty quick that when I hire a designer now, I need to have 40 hours of design work for that guy every week. And that turned into my job eventually. And that wasn't as exciting for me as solving problems and making things.
And thus the convenience of outsourcing to a company like Modern Tribe, right?
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Well, I hope to be able to outsource more work to them, you know, or other agencies, whatever. I just think that you find the right people for the right job. You know, you use the person that can get the job done. And, you know, I was really lucky to have, you know, because like I said, I really went there for Travis because I had worked with him before, and he had just started with Modern Tribe not too long before that. But I know Reed and Peter and Shane very well, but I'd never worked with them before, and I didn't really know, you know, I don't know. So much in this WordPress community is a lot of smoke and mirrors, you know, like this is a huge agency. And, you know, until like, if I didn't work with them, I don't know that I would believe it, but Tribe's the real deal. And, you know, you just don't know. You don't know until you know. And But I went in on Travis's recommendation, you know, and because I really wanted to work with him. And
Travis, you can stop blushing now. It's been blushing.
But
for
everybody
10 minutes.
else blew me away, though. It was lucky to have Travis as the conduit, because there were a lot of people that he brought in that really just surprised us and said, "Wow, this stuff is really great."
Yeah, I mean, I think like being able to collaborate in the way that we did, you know, like Kiko said, you create successes that way, and it's been a lot of fun, like being able to work together with Kiko and of course Brent on this project. Like, what a rad experience, what a rad project, what a rad like portfolio piece. You know, I mean, like Tribe gets to work on these huge projects, these really big like problem-solving infrastructure things. It's rare that we get to work on a project with Pharrell involved or something like that. You know, I mean, like, and those are the types of projects that, you know, me working with, you know, new project strategy and bringing on new clients and stuff like that. It's the type of stuff we want to continue to solve. Like we're just as much designers and UX people as we are developers and strategists. Like we've got a great group of people at Tribe. So.
Well, I want to thank you both for being on the show, for giving us the lowdown, sort of the behind the scenes of Tuniversity. Kiko, where can interested listeners find it? Do we have a price on it? Do we know how much it is?
Yeah, the book is $4.99. We priced it like a workbook. We didn't really want to price it like a textbook, but I don't know. I mean, I think everybody will tell you their products are an extreme value, but I really believe it's an extreme value for $5, because you also get the GarageBand projects for that. And
yep.
I showed it to last December. Pharrell was in New York playing, and he had a fill-in bass player, and I showed it to him. And he was so blown away by it. And he said, you know, like, this is unbelievable. I don't even want kids to have this, because like, I didn't get this when I was 12 years old. Like, this is unfair. And he said, but this, you know, it's amazing. And I said, well, how much do you think we should charge for it? I always ask people that that buy these types of things. And he said, well, I would definitely keep it under $100, because you want to have it accessible to people. And I said, well, how about $4.99? He's like, oh, you better be ready to sell a whole lot of these then. But I mean, a lot of DJs would pay $4.99 to be able to get access to those stems alone. Like, hands down, they would pay that. But I don't know that DJs know that they can get access to that stuff through a book, right? Like, it doesn't even sound intuitive, but you can get access to these files through the book. And it's on the iBook store.
Okay,
Apple iBook store. And if you just search for Tuniversity or learn Pharrell Williams Happy, or you can search for Kiko Doran and you'll find it too.
That's what I've been doing. I've been searching for Kiko Doran. I find all kinds of good stuff.
Oh.
No need to worry. So yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for being on. How can people keep in touch with you, or you know, maybe they're impressed with your work? Maybe you can. They got a project that they want you to work on.
You can find me at pretty much anywhere. Kiko Doran, KIKODORAN. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram's my favorite now, but yeah, any of those places. Snapchat, I'm on there too. Instagram, the real behind the scenes.
Wait, Kiko's on Instagram, man! I had no idea.
Wow, there you go. Geez,
that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, just at Travis Tots consistently, and then Modern Tribe's just at Modern Tribe Inc. on Twitter. Check us out.
There we go.
Yeah, and Tuniversity is Tuniversity Book everywhere on social media.
Oh, okay. Because if you just type in Tuniversity, or I guess like me, misspell Tuniversity, you come up with some strange results in Google right now.
Yeah.
So I have to type in like Kiko Doran Tuniversity, and sometimes it pops up.
Yeah, it's University with a T at the beginning. At first, it was going to be Tuniverse. We really that was Pharrell's idea, Tuniverse, and we were trying to get the domain. We offered the guy $100,000. He wouldn't take it. It's crazy, yeah. But wow. So Tuniversity it became.
I didn't own that domain, or else I would have accepted that offer. Hey, gentlemen, thanks a lot again for being on the show, and congratulations on the successful launch of a product that, you know, in the future we could look back on and say this thing changed the way people learn music.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy, guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, cheers.
There you have Travis Tots and Kiko Doran, man. What a pleasure to have those guys on the show and learn a bit about what goes on behind the scenes of a huge project like that. What do you think, John?
I wish I would have said yes to Kiko 2 years ago.
Oh, you're kicking yourself now, aren't you? Hey, hindsight's 20/20, though. I mean, would you? I mean, seriously, looking back on it, would you change anything? Do you really want to go back in time and say yes?
Well, a little bit, sure. What an awesome project to not be a part of. But it's been I've had a good 2 years. So, I won't complain about the 2 years that I've had. But I mean, it's a really cool project. And I love music. And when we had talked about it, it made perfect sense. And I've been lucky that Kiko has given me sort of 6-month updates and betas. I've gotten to see it grow over the course of the past 2 years. So it's exciting to see it out, and I'm just really happy for these guys. It's great.
All right, so we have one news story we wanted to talk about before we wrap up today's show, and that is the story of Vanguard. Now, if I don't know if some of our listeners out there were users of Vanguard, but it's a 7-year-old plugin, and what it did was it was sort of like the Akismet, but for user registrations, and it was pretty popular, I think, for BBPress sites, BuddyPress sites, and even WordPress, and it was a service. And there came a point in time where the server costs were too much to pay for. The plugin author, Jose Conti, created it, and he appealed to the WordPress community. In fact, Sarah Gooding we wrote about it and covered it on the Tavern. He created this crowdfunding campaign to revitalize the project and pay off some of the server costs. But the crowdfunding project didn't make as much money he didn't get as much money as he was requesting, so I'm not sure what happened because of that. However, SiteGround stepped in, and they started sponsoring him, so they kind of removed his server cost, but he ended up just disappearing from the internet. Vanguard wasn't working correctly, and there's been a lot of questions as of late as to, well, what happened to the service? What happened to Jose? And he actually published on the Vanguard support forum section of WordPress.org with a pretty long and detailed and albeit sort of frightening take on why he decided to stop working on Vanguard. And I'll just briefly we'll try and cover some of the highlights of what he said, but he says that Vanguard worked in 2 different ways. It was an algorithm that he's been refining for 7 years, which was getting better. And then there is the human factor of it. And he says that if it wasn't for the human factor, there's no way that Vanguard could be as good as it is today. But he says during those 7 years, he visited sites to learn about how the sort of the splogging sites. And that's where he saw pictures of there's pedophilia, beheadings. I mean, the worst things you can think of. He was visiting these sites to improve sort of the human side of the service, and he ended up spiraling. He tried to ignore it, but eventually it got to him. He started getting very depressed. He wanted to hide all this stuff from his children that he had, and so he just sort of disappeared. And now that he kind of got his life back together, it says it took him about 6 months to recover. He's not sure if he's completely recovered back to his life, but he says that Vanguard was one of the most effective tools, and he ended up getting death threats all the time for like people in the mafia because it was his service that was causing them to lose millions of dollars. So he says for the past 4 years he's been going through death threats. So he says for all that and the death threats, this is the reason for Vanguard's closure. I think he's just wow. I mean, for 7 years to go through to see all that I mean, he talks about he saw the beheadings and all, the worst stuff you can think of on the internet he's dealt with and he's seen, and just a really, I guess, shocking, way to put it. I mean, I don't know what to say, although that Vanguard, I know that Vanguard was, from everybody from the comments on when we wrote about it on the Tavern, it was actually a great service. It worked. A lot of people enjoyed using it, and it was very effective on BBPress sites and BuddyPress sites. So it's a shame to see it go away. The plugin is open source, but Vanguard was turning more. The algorithm, I think, is all based on a service. So I don't know where the code is. Maybe it's gone because it existed on those servers. But yeah, kind of a sad day to see Vanguard disappear, and just wow, all the reasons behind it.
Well, for this past 7 years, Jose has sort of been a white knight, really, like independently building, supporting, maintaining, tuning Vanguard this entire time, and not really bearing the brunt of all of his research so that nobody else would have to. I mean, that's sort of the ultimate.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
The ultimate self-sacrifice to build something that he believed in so deeply that you know, you drive yourself a little crazy trying to make sure that nobody else has to. It's an incredible effort that I've watched with Buddy Press and BB Press in the forums, and with him in the forums on occasion, dropping in, helping with support with the BBs. And so it's been a few years, but remember interacting with him really fondly with all of the work that went into Vanguard. And I'd seen his crowdfunding campaign, and having gone through similar things on my own, tried to be as supportive as I could, but it's an unbelievable tragedy, really, and to be targeted in this way because you're doing the right thing, and not really have any recourse, right? Like, you're just constantly taking punches and getting beat up, and there's nothing that you're really able to do about it. So,
you know, at some point you just got to figure, you know, I could say I could sort of relate to him where, you know, maybe in the first couple of years it's, well, okay, death threats. Yeah. Okay. You're not going to do anything, you know, just, you could sort of brush them aside, but then maybe you get children and you start thinking about your children. You see all this filth, and then you continuously get death threats. And I mean, eventually I think it just wears down on you, both on your psyche. And I think it's obvious here. I mean, he even admits that it just got to the point where he just had to shut down. He had to take a break. He had to get away from it all and just sort of think about his children. And, you know, it's not too far from reality that these death threats could be realized. I mean, in the days that we live in today, you have to take these death threats seriously.
Yep. And it's this type of work, and looking at the seedy side of things is not for everybody. You see it, that's the saying, right? Is you see how the sausage is made, and it's not for everyone. There are some I've got friends of mine that have been farmers their entire lives that are completely, perfectly, 100% comfortable, completely processing an animal start to finish as if it was with nothing. And I think for myself and potentially the majority of people, it's a thing that we'll never get to, have to, need to do. So when you're working on something that is somewhat, like, the secrets are really important. Like, Akismet is one of those things where you're working on something that your algorithm is equally as important as the service that it is providing. And so protecting it and protecting the sanity of the people that support it and maintain it is incredibly important. I remember, like, even I don't think this is like sharing any secrets or anything, but internally at Automatic, the Akismet team is like a walled secret garden. Like, anything that happens on the guts of what Akismet does is, at least when I was there, was strictly for very specific people that worked on Akismet and literally nobody else. And so these are the secret keys to the whole kingdom. Like, it's not to be taken lightly at all. And Automatic treated it extremely seriously, and it makes me wonder, what does a bigger target deal with on a day-to-day basis? What does Automatic deal with in terms of the number of pieces of spam that they block in a day? Do they receive an equal number or exponentially more threats as a result of the billions of comments that are spammy, that are potential revenue for someone that they're not getting? I mean, there's a whole underside to that Jose is enlightening us with, that is an important part of tech that we don't really see, we don't talk about. So,
and I didn't mention money, and that's by choice. Jose actually says, you know, it was never about the money. If he wanted it to be about the money, he could have charged a certain amount for the plugin, and he could have made enough money to take care of the service, take care of himself. But he said it was all just about accessibility and wanting to build the best tool for the most amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think when you're dealing with death threats like this, the money doesn't matter anymore. Like, you could be making a lot of money and still be worried about your life. So it's terrible.
So why don't we give our, express some, let's express our gratitude and our thanks to Jose for the work and his contribution to the BBs and to the WordPress community for his service at Vanguard. And we wish him and his family the best. We wish them to be safe. And, you do whatever is necessary to protect yourself and your loved ones.
And my question to listeners, and maybe our food for thought for the next week, is where do we go from here? What do you do when this is the reality of the software that you build? And without Vanguard, which I think was it was everyone's go-to solution for mitigating sign-up spam. So without it now as a thing, where do we go from here? How do we solve what is clearly a very real problem together? How do we solve this problem in a way that we are very lucky that Akismet has solved for us with comments? How do we do the same thing with signups? Because it's an important thing for any WooCommerce site, so membership site, anything like that has open signups. Signup spam is a big deal. So where do we go from here? What do we do next?
There we go. So we got our homework. Put your thinking caps on. Maybe we'll maybe email us, jeffc@wptavern.com. Let me know, and then we'll read your responses on the air. So we do have a couple picks for you this week. My first is wphierarchy.com, which is actually a WordPress resource created by Rami Abraham. Shout out to Rami. It's been a while. In 2013. And the site's actually an interactive version of Michelle Schultz's colorful diagram of WordPress's template hierarchy. So each template is linked to documentation that explains its function. So if you visit that site, wphierarchy.com, you can actually see right there in front of you how the template, how a theme works, and whatever template you click on, it'll link you to either the Codex article, or there might be a Make Core blog post that talks about that specific functionality. But it's really cool. It was actually acquired by the folks over at WP Shout, and what they've done is they've actually updated the diagram now, so it's more up to date. And they've removed some things and added some things. So there you go. Definitely check it out if you want to learn how the template hierarchy works in WordPress. And that's my pick.
If the WP Shout folks, or if Michelle are listening, BuddyPress and BBPress have their own template hierarchy too that could use a diagram. Just saying,
bphierarchy.com. Check and see if it's available.
So my pick of the week this week, I'm going off the grid. I found on YouTube a video that sort of changed my life in an interesting way. And so I wanted to share. There is a fellow by the name of Russell A. Barkley, Dr. Russell A. Barkley. He's got a video on YouTube titled 30 Essential Ideas Everyone Should Know About ADHD. And for me, the thing that, aside from it striking somewhat close to home, was how clearly and quickly Dr. Barkley was able to break down and really invert the way that I think people look at ADHD or anything even sort of in the same realm of it. And so he breaks it down in a very cool way that I clearly am not qualified to try and repeat. But one of the things that he said that was my takeaway that I will share is that he explains that ADHD is sort of nearsightedness to time, where you don't see that things are coming until they are right up in front of your eyes. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting way to think about what someone or the people that you know or loved ones or friends or coworkers or colleagues or whomever else, they might not know, they might not have been diagnosed, they might not be aware that this is how they see the world or completing tasks. But when I thought about it like that, it helped me sort of look at the people in my life that maybe are potential sufferers, or that I'm myself, definitely. But so check it out, Dr. Russell A. Barkley, 30 Essential Ideas Everyone Should Know About ADHD. There's it's like a 45-minute talk that was broken down into a bunch of tiny 4-minute talks. There's a whole YouTube channel. There's a bunch of videos about him. He's got a ton of data out there. So if you want to learn more, this guy knows his stuff. This dude's on it, and very super informative. So that's my pick of the week.
We'll have a link to that video, the YouTube channel, in the show notes. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of WordPress Weekly. You can find show notes for this episode and all previous episodes on WPTavern.com. And by the way, I should have said this at the beginning of the show, but there's been some people, there've been some reports of people who have been experiencing errors or having problems downloading the show. I'm looking into that. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So my apologies. Our feed links were broken on the tavern last week for a couple of days. We got that rectified, but as far as the episodes go, I'm looking into that. So we're going to work on that. Hopefully they should be working correctly here. If not today, then within the next few days, once I figure out what's going on. The gremlins in the internet strike again. Yeah. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jeffro. That's JEFFR0. And John?
Follow me on Twitter or GitHub at JJJ, and blog at jjj.blog.
And so everybody enjoy the rest of your shortened holiday week, hopefully. And we'll talk to you again next Wednesday afternoon. So long, everybody.
See ya.